Welcome to Tartarian Tales 67, and we're going to go back to our buddy Tamerlane here because I found an incredible book, which I'll put a link in the information below, that is a two-part, like probably over 1,000 pages of the life of Timur, or Tamerlane, I believe. And the years are kind of all over the place, but and where you hear stories of Tamerlane. Some say 8th century, some say like the 1300s, so I don't really know exactly what's going on with the whole time thing, but this book has a ton of amazing aspects of his life, his stories, his conquests, everything. And one of the most important things that I think is one of the best parts to read in these books are the quotes from these guys. So whether they seem like they're direct quotes, almost as if like they were recorded at some way in a different way, and then they were later recorded into text, or maybe there was a stenographer there at the time of a lot of these things. But a lot of the speeches seem just like, they're very unique to the person speaking. They follow a similar like rhythm and everything, so you can tell they're like from the same person, and they've been preserved really well, I believe. I don't know the truth about anything. I'm trusting this book to give me some insight here, and it seems pretty awesome. But I've gathered a collection. I'll probably do this in a couple parts because I found a lot of excellent information in this book that I want to share with you all. But this first part is going to be quotes from Tamerlane. So different things, and some quotes about him from other kings and sultans and cons. But this is going to can have a few different clips that I like, that I selected from this book right here, History of Timur, Tamerlane the Great, Emperor of the Moguls and Tartars. And you're going to see it's really cool just hearing all the different things, hearing people talk about him and hearing him talk about different aspects of being an emperor. It really gives incredible insight into this process, this time period, and this man himself, who our leaders could learn a lot from, because when comparing this guy to the leaders we have now, it's just a night and day. Our people now, politicians, have no soul, it appears, maybe one or two of them, but the rest are corrupt, terrible monsters. And this guy had just an incredibleness about him that's very interesting, and it comes out in these speeches. So I want you to hear that here. And let's get right into it. I've put the selections that I'm going to read from right here. They're kind of the green I use to mark the parts that I'll be reading. And take what you will from it, add some insight, share, spread it, see what happens. Because everyone always talks about Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great and all these people, but they always leave out Tamerlane, and I think there's a good reason, because I think he built a lot of the stuff that other people claim, and I think he did a lot of things that then got placed onto other leaders as history became written and rewritten and falsified and lied about and just constantly shifting. So here we go, let's do this. And we're going to start with this one over here on page 291, a quick one, where it says, Timur was again pleased to show his clemency to the king of Egypt, and spoke to him as follows. I know that Farouj lost his father when very young, which will make it my glory to take care of this young prince, and be to him as a father. If he continues firm in his obedience, which is the only way of rendering himself, we will give him testimonies of our benevolence, and grant him succors with which he may preserve his kingdom, provided he zealously continues in the service of the two holy cities of Mecca and Medina. He afterwards presented vests, belts, and crowns to the ambassadors, and permitted him to return home, giving him a crown, a royal mantle, and a belt enriched with precious stones for the Sultan Farouj, their master, to whom he promised his protection. So he really respects kind of like other families and different things. I mean, when he's not conquering them, and even when he is, he seems to have good intentions around a lot of what he does. And he always seems to give vests and belts and different crowns and things like covered in jewels. So like, where did he get this stuff? Was he making it? Did he pillage it from past civilizations? But he just has a ton of it. And have any of them survived? I would love to see them. So then the next chapter is kind of interesting. It says Timur marches against the Kara Tartars, or Black Tartars. So that's an interesting chapter, again, on 291. And again, it's at AD 1256 on that page. So very interesting. And this is from that section, 293, where he says, the emperor, having passed the bridge of Kitcheler, after several days' march, arrived at the country of the Kara Tartars, whose chiefs he ordered to be called before him. There came two of them, Akhi Tabarak and Mervek. and bear with me, these pages are all very blurry, so if I get things wrong, I'm trying. All right, they hissed. See, that's it. Kissed the ground before the emperor, who gave him a handsome reception, presented him with vests and belts wrought with gold, and swore he would never do him the least harm. He is quoted as saying, "It is a long while," says he, "since your ancestors came out of the country of Touran, Touran, which was their ancient residence, into these foreign lands by the orders of the emperors, our predecessors. As all that vast country is at present governed by one master, God having brought it under my obedience, you ought to look upon this opportunity as very fortunate to you, and return from hence with your wives, children, slaves, cattle, and other riches, under the convoy of our soldiers, to the country of your ancestors, where you may pass your life agreeably under the shadow of our protection." Let's see here. So that's just one other section. I think that's where that quote ends. But he's just power. He was a powerful guy, and he respects the ancient ancestors and the predecessors that came before him, and the kind of the rules that they set forth, which I find very interesting as well, because he's got like such a interesting sense of being like a conqueror. And I wonder if how he inherited this position, and if there was some kind of divine connection that he has and is exploiting for the benefit of the people or something. I'm not really sure. We'll see. After the next page on 369 says, after this hero was, so this is a chapter, something happened before this, you can kind of tell. I don't go too far into it because this video will be huge, but here we go. It says, after this hero was happily returned from the conquest of Syria, Natolia, and Georgia, and of consequence found himself absolute master of all the empires of Iran and Turan, he generously took up a resolution to make preparations for the conquest of China, which was inhabited by infidels, that by this good work he might rectify what had been amiss in other wars, wherein the blood of so many of the faithful had been spilt. Thus, after the marriage of the princes, his grandchildren, was consummated, he summoned the Mirzas, his children, and the great emirs of his council to court, to whom he made the following speech. So this is an epic speech before he's talking about going into China. God hath favored us with such extraordinary good fortune that we have conquered Asia and overthrown the greatest kings of the earth. Few sovereigns in past ages, having acquired so great dominions, or attained so great authority, or had such numerous armies, or so absolute a command. And as these vast conquests have not been obtained without some violence, which has caused the destruction of a great number of God's creatures, I have resolved to perform some good action which may atone for the crimes of my past life, and to accomplish that which aft the world besides is not capable of, that is, to make war on the infidels and exterminate the idolaters of China, which can't be done without very great strength and power. It is therefore fitting, my dear companions, that those very troops which have been instruments whereby whole faults were committed, should also be the instruments of repentance, and that they may march into China to acquire the merit of that holy war in demolishing the temples of the idols of the fire and erecting in their places mosques and chapels. By this means we shall obtain the pardon of our fias, as the Al-Quran allures us, saying that God works for us to fix of this world. I'm not sure. It works for us the fixes of this world, the fires of this world. I'm not sure. It's again blurry. Timur, having finished this speech, the princes of the blood and emirs besought God to bless his good intentions, and unanimously applauding his sentiments and loading him with praises, they said, "Let the emperor, say they, display his standard, and we, his slaves, will follow him and sacrifice our lives in his service." Then orders were given to the Tarachis to take an exact number of all the soldiers by thousands, and to augment and enroll the regiments. Timur commanded all the emirs of Onlans, and the governors of provinces to assemble their soldiers. They took copies of the Tutul from the great Tavaches, that they might know in what order and with what arms they should come. And they departed to get together their troops in all the provinces. So this is as he's preparing to take China. So very interesting. And again, he talks to his family, he talks to everyone, kind of fills it in and figures it out. And he knows there's violence. He's atoning to God. It's almost like he really has this, he's doing this mission, not really for himself and for ego purposes, but for some other purpose that I can't quite put my finger on, whether it's divine or something else. It just seems like he's doing the will of something else or someone else. And maybe it's the same as it is now. We have the names out there that seem to be bringing this world to the depths of HE double hockey sticks, and other people, and maybe they're the puppets for someone else. I wonder if the same game was played out all through time. So here we go. This is another one on page 184. I thought this was pretty interesting. It says, at break of day they decamped, and after a league's march towards the south side of Damascus, which looks upon the country of Canaan, Egypt, and the desert of Arabia, they encamped again and built a wall about the height of a man round the camp, and dug a trench around the wall. The scouts went out to ravage the country in the neighborhood of Damascus, and Timur placed both infantry and cavalry round the walls of the camp to guard them in the night. And he's about to get to a quote here, but some of the things you'll notice in the clips, mostly from the next video I do, will be how quickly they build things, machines, walls, towers. It's pretty amazing when you see how quickly an army seems to be able to build these things. So the quote goes, 2 days after Timur sent Padi Cha Banuram, ambassador to the Sultan of Egypt, with the following letter. So this is one of his letters to Egypt. You are not ignorant of the effects which circumspection and exactness produce, and know that emulation and jealousy mixed with ambition are the motives which oblige conquerors to raise armies, undertake the most dangerous wars, and make themselves masters of countries and kingdoms, and that by this means they preserve the honor of their crown and acquire eternal fame. All this great noise of the world is not so much to heap up riches as to acquire honor, for half a loaf every day is sufficient for the nourishment of a man. We have several times demanded atilmich of you, and you have not once offered to send him to us, but have always started some difficulties, and delayed an affair of such consequence. This hath obliged us to make war in your country, which will bring ruin and desolation upon your subjects. If rocks could speak, they would tell you that this something of yours portends no good to you. Yet, notwithstanding your unreasonable proceedings, if you'll cause the money to be coined, and the public prayers to be read in our name, that shall stop our fury. This you ought to do if you have any compassion for yourself or subjects. Our soldiers are like roaring lions which want their prey. They seek to kill their enemy, pillage his effects, take his towns, and overturn his edifices to the very foundations. There are but two ways to choose, either peace, the consequences of which are quiet and joy, or war, which produces disorder and desolation. I have set both before you. It is your part to follow one or other. Consult your prudence and make your choice. Farewell. And then it says, the ambassador having carried this letter, they received him with very particular honors, contrary to their usual custom, at which reception they practiced all the ceremonies used towards the most illustrious men. And as fireworks are very often made in this country, they assembled a great many persons of this trade, who passed in review before the ambassador to show their strength and power. But they were not ignorant that these were no more than atoms in comparison of the court of Timur, after they had endeavored to please the ambassador by abundance. So very interesting. It's just, this guy is just a beast. By abundance of civil treatment and several honors bestowed on him, they sent him back, and he was followed by several lords of the court of the Sultan of Egypt, who came to cast themselves at the foot of the imperial throne, and spoke to Timur in these words. So this is from them to Timur. Most excellent and formidable emperor, we know that we appear before your majesty as your meanest servants, yet we are full of respect and submission. We have resolved to send Atimok to your august court within 5 days, And if after that you deign to pardon our faults, we'll omit no occasion of giving you marks of a perfect obedience. And as far as depends on the power of the Sultan and the capacity of his subjects, they shall endeavor to merit by their service the goodwill of your majesty and the friendship of the illustrious lords and officers of your imperial court. Kissing his butt. This guy, wow, what a power. He just makes people shake in fear, but they know, they trust that he will grant them the peace. So it's kind of interesting. He's got good and crazy aspects to him. The emperor, being touched with their discourse, which was colored over with an appearance of sincerity, gave him a kind reception worthy of his clemency. He made him presents of vests, and with very obliging expressions assured him of the sincerity of his heart. He afterwards sent him back very well contented, and pleased with having succeeded so well in their embassy, and this appearance of an accommodation occasioned joy to the inhabitants of Damascus. Very cool. Just love traveling back in time and looking at this stuff and examining it from a fresh perspective. It's really just a cool thing to do. And there's some kind of thing here with them getting the exactness. And I know there could be some letters that were maybe found, but this is old stuff and it is preserved perfectly. I wouldn't be surprised if there was recording equipment or different ways to do things like that back then, or just some other method. But either way, let's keep going. So the next one I've got is on page 148, and it says, I'll read from the top, which is from the page before, but it's going to be to the Emperor of Raum Bajazet the Thunder. So it is some cool stuff relating to this guy. With praises of God and blessings on Muhammad, he made use of this passage of the Alquran for the subject of his letter. God blesses those princes who know what use they should make of their power, and go but beyond bound prescribed them. And he continued with expressions which were as daggers to the heart of Bajazet, and ought to have shown him his duty. The letter was as follows. This is cool. After the usual compliments, we let you know that by the infinite grace of God, the greatest part of Asia is in subjection to our officers, which we conquered by our strength and the terror of our arms. Know likewise that the most powerful sultans of the earth are obedient to our commands, that we govern our dominions by ourselves, and have even constrained fortune to take care of our empire, that our armies are extended from one sea to the other, and our guard consists of sovereign kings who form a hedge before our gate. Where is the monarch who dares resist us? Where is the potentate who does not glory in being of the number of our courtiers? But for thee, whose true origin terminates in a Turkoman sailor, as everyone knows, it would be well since the ship of thy unfathomable ambition has suffered shipwreck in the abyss of self-love. If thou wouldst lower the sails of thy rashness and cast the anchor of repentance in the port of sincerity, which is the port of safety, left by the tempest of our vengeance, you should perish in the sea of the punishment which you merit. Amazingly. I love the way they speak. So cool compared to now, especially where everything is just nonsense. But as we have learned that, in obedience to the precept of the Alquran, which orders us to wage war with the enemies of the Muslim laws, you have undertaken a vigorous war with the Europeans. This consideration hath hindered us from making any insults in the land, or insets, in the lands which are subject to you. In the reflection that your country is the bulwark of the Mussulmans, hath obliged us to leave it in a flourishing condition, for fear the passage of our armies into it should raise a division among the inhabitants, and cause the Mussulmans to be disquieted and the infidels to rejoice. Then take care of yourself, and endeavor by your good conduct to preserve the dominions of your ancestors, not suffering for the future your ambitious foot to wander out of the limits of your power, which is but small. Cease your proud extravagances, lest the cold wind of hatred should extinguish the flame bow of peace. You may remember the precept of Muhammad to let the Turks remain in peace while they are quiet. Don't seek to wage war with us, which no one ever dared to do, and prospered. The devil certainly inspires you to ruin yourself. Though you have been in some considerable battles in the woods of Natolia, and have gained advantages upon the Europeans, it was only through the prayers of the Prophet and the blessings of the Mohammedan religion, of which you make profession. Don't be proud at these advantages, nor attribute them to your own valor. Believe me, you are but a pishmir. Don't seek to fight against the elephants, for they'll crush you under their feet. The dove which rises up against the eagle destroys itself. I love that line. Shall a pretty prince such as you are contend with us? But your rhodomontades are not extraordinary, for a Turkoman never spake with judgment. If you don't follow our countries, you will repent it. Or our counsels, you will repent it. These are the advices we have to give you. Do you behave yourself as you think fit? Amazing. This guy is just wielding his power at people, and just wow. This letter was sealed with the imperial signet and delivered to Bajazet by enemies who knew how to carry on the intrigues of princes. When they were come to Bajazet, they presented him the letter, acquainting him with the reasons of their coming and their master's pretensions. But pride had taken too deep root in the breast of the Ottoman for a letter or the words of an ambassador to have any effect upon him. He gave him therefore a very haughty answer. It is a long time, said he, since we have been desirous of carrying on a war with you. God be thanked, our desire has had its effect, and we have taken up a resolution to march against you at the head of a formidable army. If you don't advance against us, we will come to seek you, and pursue you as far as Taurus and Sultania. We shall then see in favor heaven will declare. Whose favor heaven will declare? Who of us will be raised by victory, and who abashed by shameful defeat? And spoiler alert, this guy gets pummeled, and so there's not much that he can really do, and all his talk is pretty much whatever. But he's one of the few that decided to defy Tamerlane, and again, it did not work out well. But wow, this book contains a ton of cool stories. I'm going to stop there with the quotes. There's a few more around that are very interesting, and a lot of descriptions of just how he went from one place to the next, conquering it, and the way he conquered it. And if people don't mess with him, he really does treat them well, and he invites them into their kingdom. But the egomaniacs that kind of just need their preservation and need all the power, they end up getting pummeled by him. In the way he has his armies, and the way he describes his armies, and the things that he does with them, the things he builds, the people, the everything. It's like a walking nation, like a migrating nation that just goes and does his will to a T. And how did people, these people followed him so much, so deep into everything that they did. He had everything planned out. It seems like he was a master of, a government. I believe he kept people's freedoms. He probably was one of the founders of what we have today in America, the Constitution in its primitive form or different form, combining the Muslim laws, Mohammedan laws with what he's got here. And so, or what he thought, and it just seems like what he does, he's very well thought out, he's very well educated, he knows how to speak, he knows how to do his thing, he has no fear, and it's so cool. And one of the last chapters of the book is about his death and the speech that his wife gives at his death and his final speech of death. So stay tuned for that, because that is, again, phenomenal. You can tell so much by the way someone writes, by what they say, how they think, what their intentions are, what what they value. Like this guy values God and the divinities and different things. And again, it makes you wonder during this time, because there were giants. There is much talk about giants in this book, and how they protected certain kingdoms in certain areas and certain distant kind of towns that were up upon mountains and then protected by giants or helped being built by giants. It's all in this book. So many cool things. So definitely stay tuned for the next Tartarian Tales, because the next few will be relating to these books and clips from it. So cool. We need to bring back Tamerlane, make him a cultural hero that he probably was, because I have a feeling just with everything that's been lost and everything that's been shifted and lied about, that Tamerlane played a very most important part in our world's history. And I think he's gotten all the credit stripped of him for whatever reason. But he seems to be have some power. And the world that he describes is a world that is so different from ours and still hiding so much. It seems like, the polar regions, whatever happened then, it's clear that I'm sure he would send his people in every direction. So what did they find there? And are those books been destroyed? Or, just because there's no telling. It's so much fun to think about and theorize all of these things. What this guy looked like, no one knew. They have all different engraving. There's some different paintings, more modern paintings, all different kinds of things. Who knows? Doesn't matter what he looked like. He left his mark. Like he said, he did a lot of things for his honor, and his goal was to get fame and worldwide fame. So we are perpetuating that 1,000+ years later, or 800 to 1,000 years later. So pretty cool. Let's keep exploring the book. If you find anything, include some cool clips below or some cool quotes, and maybe I'll include them in some of the next videos or anything. But there's a lot to search for in this book, a lot of awesome things to find. So good luck. Bless you all.